All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. It's a Monday night. It's time for the Urban Conservative Podcast. Tonight, we're asking the question: is Black culture a problem in America? The Urban Conservative Podcast starts right around now, y'all.
Welcome to the Urban Conservative Podcast, where we do not believe that avocado toast can save the planet or the world will end, because cars use gasoline. You won't hear that Wi-Fi is a basic human right, or that billionaires are secretly supervillains. Here, we do not believe that electric cars run on hopes and dreams. You also won't hear that anyone who disagrees with us is a fascist, or that socialism will make everyone rich. You won't be gender affirmed or offered any opportunity to share your preferred pronouns. If this causes you any discomfort, please rest assured that we couldn't possibly care less. For everyone else, thank you, and please stand by.
My fellow Americans, it's time for the Urban Conservative Podcast. This is without a doubt the best podcast on the internet. It's about to go down here on the Urban Conservative.
3, 2.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. It is time for the Urban Conservative Podcast. It's Monday night. That means it's time to get it in. Yours truly, Abdul Ali, one half of the TUC twins with my twin brother from the same mother, no other, Raheem Soto. Before we jump in, bro, a little plugging, right? You got to do a little plug, don't you?
Again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone had a happy Easter. Blessed Easter. We are officially at the Easter mark in the cycle of the sun around the planet, sir. So
Yep.
I hope everyone had a good, solid, peaceful, refreshing Easter Sunday. Now, as my brother said, yeah, we got to get some plugs out of the way. I'm slacking because I didn't even have the tab shared up, but Saturday, May 3rd, I'm doing my official campaign kickoff event. You're invited if you're in the Southampton town area, West Hampton Beach area. I got the flyer popping up. I don't know if you see that, bro, if you can hit the share on that.
All right, working on it right now. Bang, bang, boogie. There you
There you
go.
go. So you can join us for a campaign kickoff in support of yours truly, Raheem Soto, Saturday, May 3rd, 2025. I don't know if y'all know, I'm running for Suffolk County Legislative District 2. I want to get in there and make some changes, for my district, fight for my district, get more resources brought back home to the East End. We do a lot for the county, and I think I can bring more to the table to get some more things done on the East End. And I will be talking about that over the coming months, what my plans are to help affordability on the East End, to help our kids get a better education, to make sure our first responders, our EMS have what they need, to attract business to the East End, to keep people there that want to live here and raise a family here and retire here and all that good stuff. So, like I said, Saturday, May 3rd, 6 to 8 p.m., West Hampton Beach, VFW Post 5350. 101 Old Riverhead Road. Get your tickets at Soto4Suffolk.com. Soto4Suffolk.com. Okay, plugs out of the way, bro.
All right, dope. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a very interesting conversation tonight. Jump in the comment section. Let us know where you are watching and or listening from. Make sure you give this video a share. I see it's already started, bro. Yo,
I
it's
know,
all
but I want to
it's
I want to do this.
already started.
Well, listen. I think we have to engage this conversation carefully, okay?
Okay.
And very skillfully. So for those who are first time listeners of our show, or if you've been around a while and have forgotten what we do here and need a quick reminder, the urban part of the Urban Conservative is an acronym for understanding reality beyond all narratives. So let's first introduce the idea of what we mean, right? There's a common but deeply flawed assumption that is what's often labeled as ghetto culture is somehow inherently Black culture. Okay, that's what's at the foundational premise of this conversation. Fair point, Ali?
Fair point.
That is what we're challenging here today. That there's first thing we have to do is get on the same page with that. That somehow ghetto culture is inherently black culture. And a quick anecdote for what it's worth. I don't know if you remember this happening, Ali. There was a conversation that was happening, and we had to agree when we were getting our wits about ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, we were asked, right? Like, oh, where do you think the average white, at the time, this was just how it was framed to us, the average white person who may adopt a black child or have care of a black child, where's the first place they will bring them when they say bring them to your people, right? Where do they end up at? And remember what the answer was, right?
Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Right. So somehow ghetto culture has inherently become black culture. So what we're going to look at today is a couple of different things that make up our disposition on the subject, which is they're not the same thing, right?
So
Um
let's be a little more. I want to be a little less couth about it.
all right, what
And
we mean by ghetto culture, let's do that first.
yeah, let's go there because there's this thing, right? And I'm gonna use this. You said the word as an anecdote. I'm gonna use this as an anecdote. There was a point in time where you and I, if we didn't smoke cigarettes, we didn't drink, we wasn't acting a certain way, our air finger quote blackness got questioned.
It's 100% true. And it has not stopped. And so you're correct with that. There has been personal scenarios where I've been told and my brother have been told that because we choose to speak a certain way, that we're in fact acting white, or we're not acting black enough, or Puerto Rican enough, or something enough. That is a thing.
You know who I'm gonna use as a prime example of this is Jasmine Crockett because there's a video of Jasmine Crockett talking, and she's not talking ghetto. She's not using slang. She's speaking proper English. She's enunciating her consonants. she's for all intents and purposes, she's just speaking proper English.
Well,
Okay.
I think before we do that, Ali, before we do that, so we have to make this clarification statement that so clearly we're not talking about all black Americans then. Like, so
Like
because
Jesse would say, Jesse Lee Peterson would say, not all, not all, not all, not all, but a lot. A
all
whole
right,
lot.
so we're saying a lot of black people are ghetto?
What we're saying is a lot of black people subscribe to the idea that black and ghetto are the same thing.
I think a lot of people do that. I don't think we could make that statement that we could qualify it to say it's just no, everybody sees it that way.
Fair enough. I
A
won't
lot
disagree
of
with that.
people see it that way. There's a lot of people who see it that way, and even some well-intentioned, well-meaning, non-racist people see it that way. So let's get all of that out on the table. Just because you see it that way doesn't make you racist.
Fair.
All
So
right. Culture isn't color, people. Like that is the phrase that we're gonna, what the thing is to take away from this beginning part here is that culture isn't color. So as we go through
mm,
this show, I think we're gonna dig a little bit more to why we're saying that culture isn't color, and somehow this. So what do you think of the mechanisms, right? When we say what we mean by by ghetto culture, we're talking about a specific subculture of the black community, correct?
I would agree that we're talking about a subculture
So
within air finger quote black America because not all people act like that. And I'll use North Carolina as a prime example, right? The poverty rate in North Carolina is right around 18%. So I'd say around, if you want to correlate that, say about 10 to 15% of people would fall into that.
So we're talking about the minority of the 40 something plus million people. We're not talking about 38 million black people are a ghetto culture. We're not talking about that. There's
No.
42 altogether. So there's a subculture. And this is the important part I think about politics is that you have to be able to look at these things, right? So let's give them some behaviors and let's see if the audience agrees if we can add these behaviors to the images that we could show. When we say ghetto and something pops up in your mind, let's define the behaviors we're talking about.
If
Anti
you, if you,
anti is a big word. Anti-intellectualism. If you want to show them that on the screen.
okay,
Let's
I can.
add anti-intellectualism into what we mean by ghetto culture. Anti-intellectualism.
All right, I got that. Sharing that now.
And I'm gonna
Bang, there you
simplify and
go.
say y'all don't wanna learn nothing. You're not interested in there's no intellectual pursuit, and you're almost against it. Maybe as a matter of how, what your worldview is, you could have a very, I forget that word that describes what I'm talking about, in the
Let's do this. And let's see if this applies. Anti-intellectualism is hostility to and mistrust of intellect, intellectuals, and intellectualism, commonly expressed as deprecation of education and philosophy, and the dismissal of art, literature, history, and science as impractical, politically motivated, and even contemptible human pursuits. So when you hear somebody say something like, "Why you gotta talk like that? Why you talking like a white man?" That school
Ain't
ain't for
nobody doing all
nobody.
that voting. When your rappers come out and tell you, "Ain't nobody doing all that voting."
Yeah, voting cool, but nah. And then the other places that you see this are when and you could just go watch a series of police interaction videos, and the first thing that comes up is you talking to me like I don't know what you saying. It's because the cop is speaking properly. It
So
is a
ghetto
yeah.
culture includes anti-intellectualism. Let's put that on the table. All right, before we get to the end of this segment, let's add the rest of these behaviors in our ghetto culture soup. We got violence as a way of conflict resolution. Does that count as
And
ghetto
that
culture?
that definitely counts. I don't know if you
Okay.
want me to mention it now, but that violence as a means of conflict resolution is not it is not something that came from a first culture of black people in this country. That's not where that came from. That's not it.
Okay.
That
Fair
came from
statement. And
somebody else.
I think we'll clean that up. Let's just add the rest of these. Promiscuity and unstable family structures. Is that a part of ghetto culture?
Certainly
Promiscuity and
is.
unstable family structures?
Certainly is.
Okay. A disregard for law and authority.
Certainly is. And Glenn Laurie, Professor Glenn Laurie, was just talking about it, and what he called it was the bad mother effer problem.
Right. And so and I think this is a fair summation to say when we say ghetto culture specifically, and what we're going to get into, as we get into this conversation, our position is that these are cultural legacies, not racial ones. Like let's just make this very simple. So
Fair
this
enough.
doesn't all right. So I think that's a fair enough way to wrap that up to say we said out of all of that that these behaviors, these traits are legacies of culture, not race. So all right, I guess we're going to commercial and then we'll come back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, taking a very quick commercial break. We'll be right back here on the Urban Conservative Podcast. The Urban Conservative is sponsored in part by Gyra Family Farms, providing your family with fresh meat, eggs, poultry, produce, and so much more. Visit gyrafamilyfarm.net to find out about their summer farm camp program, events and classes, and their exclusive Farm Share membership, which will give you 15% off all your purchases. Again, visit gyrafamilyfarm.net to find out. Carry Discount and Capital Appliance Repair is your trusted partner for appliance repairs and home services. When you're dealing with a malfunctioning refrigerator, dishwasher, washer, or dryer, we have the expertise to keep you running smooth. Visit us online or call 919-468-5860 today for Carry Discount and Capital Appliance Repair. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're back on the Urban Conservative Podcast. Tonight's conversation is Black culture a problem in America? We've outlined some of the things that go into the ghetto culture soup, if you will.
So,
I like the way
yeah,
yeah.
so this is kind of the direction I think we should go, right? So,
Okay.
a resource of ours to help us get a grip here, because like it is a disservice to have it is a disservice to the great Black Americans. Historically, it is a disservice to them to allow the link to this subculture to be the predominant thought of the like in other words, it just it we can't allow that to happen. That's why we're doing this. This cannot continue to be the thing. So one of the pieces that you can use to justify the position that we do is and we this is kind of a paraphrase, but what many regard as the culture of poverty or the ghetto is in fact a direct descendant of white Southern redneck culture. Okay, and
If
that's
you
black.
do not believe us,
Well, we're gonna get into
you're
some facts, right?
okay. Go. Let's go. Let's
So
do it.
the general sense of this is that Scots Irish settlers, proud, honor bound, violent, and anti intellectual, a life passed on through genes, but geography, and a life passed on not through genes, but geography and social proximity for these behaviors. So let's
Let
talk a
me
bit about
let
Grady
let
McWhiney, right? Let's do that for a second. Grady
so
McWhiney. I don't know if y'all have ever heard that name.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a very interesting book that y'all ought to get your hands on, and that book is called Cracker Culture. Okay, and it's by a guy named Grady McWhiney. Okay, and Grady McWhiney wrote this book. He took excerpts of people who traveled through the South. And I'm going to go. The reason I want to go to the contents because it talks about the settlement of the Celtic Western British Isles people into the Americas. And when you start talking about how they settled, what their heritage is, how they do hospitality, violence, what was that one you mentioned in the soup? The violence as a means of conflict resolution. When we talk about even to the point of how much their church experience has become what black people will call the black Southern black church experience, where you get the hooting and hollering preacher, where you get that is not a distinctly black thing. Okay. That came from these folks, Western British Isle, poor country folk. Now, one of the things we have to understand is there's something called first culture or enculturation, and then you have something called acculturation. There is a difference between the two. Do we need to stop there and kind of break that down, bro? Should we break that down?
So I'll just say this, right? Inculturation. In is the is we'll say the good one, right? Inculturation is the good one, where we all live in proximity to each other and useful characteristics and food things and things just kind of gradually, naturally blend together. And then there's the bad one, which is acculturation, which is
Which is
this
a
one. That's
process of
slavery.
social, psychological, and cultural change that stems from the balancing of two cultures while adapting to the prevailing culture of the society.
Sure.
Keep in mind what we're talking about when we're talking about the antebellum South, when we're talking about how and what proximity, my brother hit the nail on the head, the proximity, you had white folk who didn't want to live next to certain other white folk. So they use black people as a barrier between the southern white air finger quote, as Grady McWineham calls him, the southern white cracker and the black folk. Where you want to go from there, bro?
No, you mean the southern white cracker and the rich white person that didn't want to be next to them.
Correct.
So, well, I think the next step in this is this, right? Pull up a pull up a little bit about McWhiney, right? I think we pull up
Okay.
his Wikipedia real quick, just so that when we bring this up, right, and we look at the disdain for education we see in the modern American certain facets, a preference for leisure over hard work. Now, I
Sound
think
like ghetto culture to me. Hold on. Let me
I
share
I
this
I I
page
I think
because I think you think you're right. We need to share a little bit about him.
Behavior?
Say that again.
I said, no, go ahead. I just was giving so in cracker culture, McWhiney describes the Celtic South as having a disdain for education, a preference for leisure over hard work, personal violence and dueling, loud, expressive, confrontational behavior. These became normalized in the South, in the Old South, and shaped both white and black communities. After the Emancipation Proclamation, these behaviors remained in some areas and were passed on. This is just a reality.
Now, before you say he's not a viable source to use, he attended the Centenary College on the GI Bill, earned an MA in history from LSU, working with Francis Butler Simpkins. He received his PhD in history from Columbia, working with David Herbert Donald. Okay,
And he traveled. He did a lot of traveling.
his dissertation dealt with Confederate General Braxton Bragg. He later became a noted specialist on the American Civil War, as well as Southern social and economic history. He co-authored Attack and Die with his doctoral student, Perry Jameson. He published Braxton Bragg and Confederate Defeat in 2 volumes. And then he also published Cracker Culture. Now, we're when you have people that were going through the South, when you look at this book, and this is not a jab at Southern people. This is, if you're in the South and you're listening to this and you're, proudly a Southerner, this is not to be disrespectful. What we have to understand is that this didn't even apply to all Southerners. This was a subset of a group of people. But what you
Right, and
had,
but Ali,
Mhm.
that is the mistake that is often made so many times is that you have to narrow this isn't everyone, right? This doesn't apply to every black person. So again, I don't want to get lost in the information in that the premise of our argument is very, very simple. That if the question is black culture a problem in America? There's two ways I think we can answer that. I think we could say what the leftist media apparatus is currently promoting as black culture as the predominant black culture is 100% a problem in America. Because if I'm supposed to take Barack Obama and I'm supposed to take certain rappers into consideration as being a part of black culture, uh uh I'm forced to make some value decisions there. Like I
well,
have to, you understand
let's
what I'm
throw it
saying? I
this
have to
way. Let's
force to
throw it
make some
this way.
value assessments here. Like,
Black culture as defined by people like Stacey Abrams, by people like Al Sharpton. These people would define black culture as coming out of slavery. And the only way that context, the context of black culture comes out of slavery is you can watch a direct tracing of follow Southern poor subculture go into the urban centers and become what we call modern ghetto culture. We just
let's add that one last layer to this, in that
sure.
it's even preserved in the names of the foods. So they took it a step further by linking the names of the food to their countries of origin and their regions of origin. They took the card games. that
Bidwish,
are
for example.
frequently
Yep.
played, yup, in Black America and Black ghetto culture. The card games that are played have a direct lineage to a particular group of people where the game is still played. The names of the food are directly related to these regions. They're regional and have become a national Black culture thing, right? So the average person hears chitlins and don't know that that's not a Black word.
Nope.
It just doesn't belong to the word. And I mean, not like a word could belong to someone, right? I guess, but like it ain't Charles. I mean, no, you have this group of people that say, what is it, culture vulturing? What is that called? Uh, um,
Yeah, culture
Cultural
vulturing.
appropriation and all of that. So
Yeah.
if the left, if the political left and the people that play identity politics really want to do this, then we have to really do it. And we have to say, y'all words that describe what y'all are doing don't even fit, that don't belong to y'all. Y'all gotta give chitlins back. Y'all gotta give certain card games back. Y'all gotta give what's what was the other dishes, Ali? It was a couple of dishes in there.
So you
It's some
had things
dishes I
like
had to let
hog
go.
maws, you had things like cornbread, you had things like certain ways of preparing pork. You had certain ways of now, interestingly, right? Interestingly, when you look this up, what you see is that these things spread with the leaving of African Americans from the South, after Jim Crow and all of that, when people started moving up to Chicago and to Detroit and out to California and up to New York, which my brother mentioned off air. If you notice, everybody that's air finger quote from up north got a family member, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa. Somebody is from down south. After this reverse migration, that's where you start seeing these different foods diffusing and going all over the place. Okay.
You got my screen pulled up just to
I
show
see it.
y'all, just to show y'all. So we're not just saying this. Chitterlings is first documented in Middle English form chitterling, right? From the 1400s, various other spellings and dialect forms were used. The primary form and derivation are uncertain. In 1743, English cookery book, The Lady's Companion, or An Infallible Guide to the Fair Sex, contained a recipe for calves chitterlings, which was essentially a bacon and offal sausage and calves intestine casing. The recipe, blah 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 blah. So
Yeah, 1743 in a
this is
book.
there's no Africa
Slaves
here.
weren't getting books, bro.
Yeah,
Let's
this is
call that
just
what it is. So
this is.
so yeah, the
Oh,
chitterlings
here
have a
right here.
strong connection with the African American soul food, and a common assumption is that the Southern consumption of chitterlings arose in pre-Civil War era slavery when less desirable parts of the pig, like pig's feet and hog jowls, were given to slaves, while the better cuts were given to the slave masters, who were thus said to be living high on the hog. However, culinary historian Adrian Miller points out that enslaved people did eat chitterlings, but white people were eating them as well. Grand opening, grand closing. Like that, there you go. Not that we got to harp on chitterlings anymore, but the whole point being, you have a direct. It even using that as an example shows you that what you're calling a black thing did not start with them.
And there's a reason we want to make like we're tabling this because like okay, well, what's the utility in this conversation? Um, there's a consistent push to lower standards. There's a
Mm,
consistent push to um buck authority in the sense of elders having the answers to get things right in life, and there's this political trend in Democrat ran cities and with Democrats at large. Unfortunately, this is the party position they've chosen that um the narrative that they own or control the narrative on slavery. They own or control the narrative on suffering and the black diasporas, the most
hold on, y'all. Hold on. I gotta share something.
Yo.
Hold on, bro. Hold on, bro. I'm pulling something up as you said
No,
that.
but did
And
my
maybe,
did oh, my mic cut back on? Okay, sorry, I knocked the
yeah.
wire out. But I'm just saying that there's a beef, which is the craziest thing ever. You understand? Am I wrong?
No, you're not
Like
wrong.
they're intellectually battling which who went through the worst atrocity, and instead of looking at it like in a human atrocity is human atrocity. I don't know why you're assigning colors to this. It's insane.
I want y'all to I want to share this, bro, because I think this, and I'm not gonna play the whole thing, but I think this will encapsulate kind of what we're talking about when we say you gotta there's this what's the word code switch people gotta do like this really I think will encapsulate it. Hold on, let me see if I can get my screen to share here. Hold on.
Well, I want to make this point real quick, Ali,
Go
before we
ahead, do
get up
that.
out of here. There's this myth of inherent culture, right? So that's the other part of this as a narrative. We say this all the time that politics involves and is related to 7 or 8 different types of sciences, and one of those is psychology. And one of those the reason it's important is because there's some things we subscribe to that, like I said, that cultures are inherent. They're not genetic. They're absorbed. You learn your culture. It's not a genetic thing. It's not like you can't just have different color eyes. That's a genetic thing.
Right. It's not you could take a black air finger quote baby minute it's born, bring it to Finland. It's not gonna
It'll have a
automatically
Finnish
grow up.
accent. It'll do all of that. Yep.
Yo, I want y'all to take a listen to Professor John McWhorter though, real quick. Listen to this.
Supporting what you just said about badass motherfuckers. So in the 1980s, I got into trouble with cocaine. I got into trouble with an extramarital affair. I was in the habits of roaming the streets of inner city Boston, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, buying drugs, hooking up, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. The most benign of it was playing chess until 3 o'clock in the morning on a street corner with a guy called Eddie, who used to make his living by selling little trinkets off of a tabletop in front of a Korean greasy spoon. Me and Eddie were buddies, and he loved to play chess. He loved to play 5-minute chess, and we'd get out there and we'd play. But that was the most benign of it. I was hanging in the hood with my peeps. I'm a professor at Harvard, hanging in the, 35 years old, hanging in the hood with my peeps. 37 years old, 40 years old, hanging in the hood with my peeps because I was a badass motherfucker because I could negotiate a seminar room over in Cambridge at the Kennedy School of Government by day and a housing project where just about anything you wanted could be purchased for a price by night. And no one was the wiser. I was a badass motherfucker. I was like Superman. I would go into that telephone booth and I put on my uniform, cock my hat to the side, pull my collar up, get my walk together, get my slang, my code switching thing. You know how it is.
So the point that I bring up by playing this, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of information. I didn't.
Did you not know? But could you imagine? And what they're talking about is in the black community, this black culture. You got to be a bad man. You got to buck authority. You got to do that. And here he is, a tenured professor, thinking that he's got to go in the hood in order to be true to his black roots.
Wow.
And but could you imagine? And he goes on to say, could you imagine what would have happened if we lost Professor Glenn McLaurie? If y'all don't know who Glenn Laurie is, whoa, you got to go listen to some of Glenn Laurie. You got to go listen to some of John McWhorter. These are two of the most preeminent American thinkers. You heard what he said, 35 years old, a professor at Harvard. But he's got to go code switch at night. So I bring that up, bro, in light of this conversation to say, is black culture a problem? Absolutely. If you're defining black culture as this sub ghetto, bonnet everywhere I go, ratchet, scream at the police, fight everybody, I'm a hood dude. I'm never gonna be. We even get to the point, right? And for those listening, we got to a point where we realized That's not it. You don't have to be stuck in that mentality. You don't have
Yeah.
to be stuck there.
So I want to close out and say this. The the there's the media, there's the politics, and then there's the trap, if you will, of
Right.
representation, right? So pop culture, politics, and activism sometimes um elevate ghetto culture. And that's an observation that we've made. And they make it seem as if it's authentically black. This is the authentic black experience. So we saw more hamburgers on turntables than anything else because they thought this was the predominant thing. But it's misleading. So rap music, reality shows, online culture are reinforcement mechanisms of stereotypes that are not broadly representative. They don't represent the entire black dynamic. It
Right,
just
because
doesn't.
then
It's just
where
not
where would Frederick Douglass fall into that? You
right.
asked
He
that
was like,
that was a great question. Where would Frederick Douglass be at in this mix? Where would where does Thomas Sowell? He's black. He grew up black.
oh,
Where
but
does
then
he fit in that mix?
there's this other weird thing. There's this other, and it's very um it's odd in the ghetto culture that in is maybe not just exclusive to ghetto culture, but this thing like if you're a black you should take Umar Johnson and no snow bunnies as he says it and no white girls. No, like so but you have these liberal elite politicians who are guilty of said charge. I'm in a mixed relationship, so I don't see nothing wrong with it, obviously. I don't care who you love who you love. Ali, I genuinely don't care, but you can't have your cake and eat it too, though.
Yo, here's the problem. Here, and I think we said this before, and y'all get in the comments. Let us know what you think. I am a The minute you get into a relationship with a non-human, that's when I got a problem, bro. You
Okay.
start
So
or a
so
child, like, yo,
yeah, right, but there's
anything
cutoffs. So
outside of that,
let's say it like this.
come on.
Let's make these points because I don't want this ever used against us to say that we somehow bashed black culture today. Culture is adaptable. It's taught. It's passed down, and it can be changed.
Yo,
So
I gotta give a big shout out. And ladies and gentlemen, if you live in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, we do an event called SAS to Class. And what this shouts out to Ashley, shouts out to Shay for doing this event, is because and I could show you the testimonials. And I know Rye, you're gonna be like, why are you harping on this? But listen to me. Listen to me. If you're out and about and you got a bonnet on your head, a bath, I get you want to protect. I get it. I
golly,
totally get it.
yeah, all right. And I think
You
you're
don't
riding.
gotta, nah, yo, because it doesn't look good. Yo, I have
You
black
just have a pet peeve with that. I understand it. It bothers you.
short
But
time though.
but you know
But
what? It's the
you
same thing. It's the same thing with pajamas in public. Like, I
Uh,
feel
uh,
you.
well, not only that, and I mean, look, there were, and this is gonna sound raw and it's gonna sound mean on as we close out. It's gonna sound mean, but when you saw the migration of blacks from the south to the north, right? They had to do things like put up signs that said no urinating in public. They had to put up signs like no fornication in public. Right? You know why? You remember the old saying, if you see a sign, it's because somebody did that thing. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, the we've got to get back to that part of being able to say you can't do that in public. You can't be
Okay.
like that in public.
So then this is why, and like you said, in closing this out, the argument that we're making is this, and we want to elevate successful, educated, disciplined, and responsible black people. That has to be the messaging. And there's more of them than the media will promote without so I think it's disproportionately promoted. The Just a whole nother conversation there about why the LGBTQ, specifically the trans movement, is painted in black. I'm there's a whole nother conversation with that. Ghetto culture is not black culture. It's a subculture with historical roots that should be studied, not glorified. If you want to
That's
do
right.
anything with it, study it, don't glorify it. So
There you
get
go.
you some Thomas Sowell reading in your life. Get you some
Get you
Walter
some
Williams
John
reading in your
McWhorter, get
life.
you some Glenn Laurie, get you some
Yeah, get some
something, man.
Charles,
Get a
get
book.
some Charles Murray in your life. You know, start to study these things. Now, we'll include some links over the next couple of days on our social media. Make sure you're following us on Facebook at TUC Twins, at the Urban Conservative on Facebook. Our YouTube channel is at TUC Twins. This has been the Urban Conservative Podcast. And like I said, man, Saturday, May 3rd, if you're around the way, you in the Hamptons area, we're in West Hampton Beach for my official campaign kickoff. Shouts out to all of our sponsors. Appreciate the support. For my twin brother, Dual Ali, I'm Raheem Soto. This has been the Urban Conservative Podcast. Get in the comments. We'll hear from y'all soon. Peace.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Knock Realty. Knock Realty provides exceptional personal service, superior customer care, while giving back 25% or more of the revenue we earn from the sale of your home to be reinvested into the local community. At Knock Realty, we believe that your care and our community come first and will always be our highest priority. Receive the most personal service when buying or selling your home at a very competitive price while making a positive impact in your community. Knock Realty. Open